evening, everybody. Welcome to the early tea time live stream presented by Fantasy Points. I'm Hunter Vaness. I'll be your host here tonight. Time to break down a new event that we have at the PGA Tour here, the Mexico Open. Excuse me. So, really excited to dive into this one here today. Before we get into that, let's talk about Fantasy Points a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe to any of their packages. I really think it is growing over this last month now. Use that promo code Vaness 22. Vaness 22, again, 2 N's and 2 S's, gets you a nice little discount on Fantasy Points there. I really think that content is starting to grow quite a bit. And I think we'll be peaking here. Well, I shouldn't say peaking, but I think we'll be seeing some of our high points here soon. So let's talk about the Zurich a little bit. Again, Cantlay and Xander won that in a pretty dominating fashion. Kind of sucks for me because I told y'all last week I wasn't playing them. Wasn't really my week, but hopefully you all had a pretty decent week on top of that. Pretty close on Sunday, I guess, but they clicked together all weekend long. I really never thought that they weren't going to pull it away, especially after they broke that course record on Thursday. I had Horschel and Burns, so I guess it was kind of close on Sunday, but I never really thought that Cantlay and Schauffele were going to give that up. So enough with that week. I think we are all ready to get past that one. Let's go ahead and look at the new event again, Mexico Open. It began in 1944. It's been played on some minor tours over the past few years, PGA Tour, Latino America, and the Nationwide Tour. So it's definitely not like a new event by any means. It's just new to the PGA Tour. It's going to be played at the Greg Norman Signature course, at Vidanta Vallarta. I think I'm getting that pronunciation right. I'm not really great with my Spanish, but it's located in southwest Mexico, again in Vidanta. New course, though, on tour. So it's kind of tough finding stats to go off of. It was tough finding information out there. I kind of tweeted it out last week that I was using Google Translate quite a bit to learn about the course. So I think a lot of people were using that same site. So you'll probably see a lot of the same information this week, which is totally fine. It opened in 2016, so it is a newer course. It was designed along the Ameca River. It has views of the beautiful Sierra Madre Mountains as well. I tweeted this out as well. You can see pictures of it. It has the world's longest golf cart bridge at over 560 feet long that connects the clubhouse to the actual golf course. So you have to kind of, drive your golf cart along the the bridge there to go play a round of golf. So kind of cool to see. All these courses have something special that make them stand out from the rest of the courses. So let's break down the course a little bit. Like I said, it was kind of tough finding stuff. Again, this is the first time we've ever seen it. There's no stats to go off of. I don't think there will even be shot tracker this weekend, is my guess. So we probably won't have much stats to go off of besides that. But if you look at the distance of the course and some of the distance of some of the holes, it looks like there's a few stats that we can go off of. We'll look at that here in a little bit. You can see my course preview on Fantasy Points. It is free this week. I'm really excited about that. I'll kind of be breaking down some of the stuff that's found in that course preview, but I'll throw a few tidbits here and there, and then we'll look at some of my favorite plays for the week. So again, this was it is a resort course, so it wasn't a PGA course beforehand, of course. It was originally a par 73. They changed it to a par 71 now. Just some changes were made to this course to make it ready for, PGA Tour standards. Some of the bunkers were updated with, really nice sand. 2 par 5s became par 4s to make that change from 73 to 71. Over half the holes were lengthened in distance to by over 160 yards total. So now it plays at 7,456 yards. Again, it is a par 71. We'll see 5 par 3s, 9 par 4s, and 4 par 5s by my count. So we'll still see those par 5s. We'll still need that par 5 scoring this week. The green surface, it's pass palm all throughout the course. So we'll look at a couple of courses that are also pass palm. The problem with that is you don't get strokes gain data for a lot of those courses because they're these coastal, resort courses that aren't played in America. So we don't have that nice data to go with it. I think there's 6 lakes by my count. I don't know how many of those actually are in play or how many holes actually are impacted by that. I think it's larger than that by I think it's 11 or 12. Um, but the and we'll get into it here in a second, but the fairways are really wide here. I don't know about the fairways, but I guess the landing areas are pretty wide. It's not very difficult to hit the fairways. So I don't know really how many water balls we'll be seeing this week. It's not really narrow like we've been seeing at some of those Florida courses. 106 sand bunkers, they really vary in size. Some of them will be really small ones. Some of them will be very, very large, kind of a Greg Norman specialty. So we'll see them all throughout the course. You'll even see like some of them in the middle of the fairway, which is kind of weird, but um, so you can't really just bomb it in the fairway and not miss some of these hazards. And we'll also see some pearota trees. I think I got that right. They'll also sit throughout the course, even in the middle of the fairway as well. So, when Greg Norman was designing this course, again, he put some hazards in places that probably, players aren't really used to seeing in certain spots. So we'll see if that impacts the course this week. I don't think it's going to be too difficult, though. Some courses that we can look at as comp courses, just other Greg Norman courses. So, TPC San Antonio, the course for Mayakoba, El Chameleon, Pass Palm courses, so Corrales, Cocoa Beach, Grand Reserve Golf Course, El Chameleon as well at Mayakoba. So those are all Pass Palm courses. Again, you can't really get putting strokes or putting data from those courses, but you can get overall strokes gained. So who's been playing on these courses that are who's been playing well on these courses that are Pass Palm wall to wall, and we'll look at that here in a second. Again, really had to look at the official website quite a bit to learn about this course, since it is the first course or the first time it's seeing its debut on the PGA Tour. It even says on the course there's large off the tee landing areas that lead to undulating greens. We'll see how difficult the greens are this week for PGA Tour players. Especially since they are past Palm, which is a bit stickier and slower. But they are protected by bunkers. There are quite a few bunkers throughout the course. We'll definitely look at some sand safe players here in a little bit. Looking at, again, pictures of the course, the fairways are pretty wide, especially those landing areas like I've been talking about where players are going to be hitting the balls. Water hazards, really it's the bunkers, I think, that are some of the biggest defenses. The length of the course as well. And they'll even say, on the course website too, you will see wind quite often, especially in the afternoon. So we may be able to attack that in showdown purposes a little bit later. Again, the sand bunkers vary in size, wide fairways, sticky pass palm grass. So I really think golfers should be able to score low this weekend. It's been a while since we've had one of those classic Midwest birdie fests, but we're not in the Midwest, of course. But those events that hit minus 20, minus 25 under par. Again, we've never seen this course before on tour, but just by looking at some of the elements of the course and just some of the pictures as well. If you dive into Google Earth a little bit, you can see exactly what we're talking about. I would assume we'll see a minus 20 score this weekend. I know the field isn't the greatest, but I do think guys are going to be shooting low. Yeah, I think that, how can we really factor this in? I guess I was planning on talking about this too. This really opens up the course or the event for really any type of player when you can shoot this low. Rahm calls it a putting contest like he did at the Amex, but he's really true. A lot of these guys are going to be hitting the greens into, and it just turns down to who can hit it the closest to the pin and who can knock in the most birdies. Because I really don't think we're going to be seeing many, scores above par like we have been over the last month or so. We'll see, though. Like I said, we've never seen this course before. Some of the big holes or main holes that I'm interested to see this week, the notable holes. We'll start with the 7th hole. It's a par 4. It is probably one of the only drivable par 4s that we'll see this weekend. It's only going to be it's under 300 yards. It's 297 to be exact. There is water on the left side of the fairway. There's some sand traps on the right side of the green, but It's going to be interesting to see, which players really attack this, risk reward hole. Because again, you could drive it. I just don't know exactly how many hazards or what those hazards look like around the green. So we'll see. I mean, again, you could obviously lay up and knock it in three and move on with your day. So going to be interesting to see how players attack it, especially those longer hitters that might not even need driver to reach the green there. Par 4 7th hole is a drivable par 4. Nope, sorry, I already went through that one. Par 5 12th hole, excuse me, is the longest hole on the course, 617 yards, which I'm certainly not a bomber, so I don't know if I'd be hitting that in two, but or even three. But a lot of these guys, we'll see. There is that perotta tree that's right in the middle of the fairway though, that kind of blocks your approach shot. So it does kind of force players to lay up. Again, according to the website. Par 4 16th hole, going to be one of the toughest holes on the course. There's sand on the left side of the fairway. There's kind of a waste sand area on the right side. The second shot will be about 200 yards, and we're going to see a lot of long irons this week. A lot of those second shots, again, since this is a lengthier course, are going to come in at least 175 yards or higher. So, again, you're going to be looking at guys who can hit those longer irons, hit it close to that pin, again, with the longer irons there. Otherwise, though, there's a green that's protected by bunkers to the center and to the left. Just interested to see how this 16th hole will play out as well. All right, so again, that's the course. My overall takeaway, again, is that it's going to be a birdie fest. Yes, Jon Rahm is clearly head and shoulders above the rest of this field, but this isn't, Memorial where you could take out more than half of the players because they're just not ready for a test like that. Again, not entirely sure. Rahm could clearly go out and win this thing by 5+ strokes, but it just opens up the field quite a bit and allows us to really look at those long shots. Again, because I think that winning score is going to be pretty low. So we'll see. Some key stats, and you could probably guess, some of the ones that I've been talking about here at the beginning. First off, strokes gain approach. That's going to be one of the most important ones, of course, for these birdie fest type of events. With hazards, again, that are all around the greens at Vidanta, we really need players who are going to be precise with those irons. So looking at the last 24 rounds, that's usually the category that I look at, or the time frame that I'm looking at for a lot of these stats. Top 5 players again in strokes gain on approach is going to be Gary Woodland, Jon Rahm, Austin Smotherman, and I'll talk about him here in a little bit. Tony Finau, who's been starting to play a little bit better as of late, and Luke Donald, who just has really great approach numbers, just has not been able to put it together in any other aspect of the game. Next up, again, this is a longer course, one of the longer courses that players are going to see on the tour, over 700 or 7,450 yards. Again, the fairways or the landing spots, again, are rather wide compared to other tour courses. So I do think we're going to be able to see, our golfers are going to be able to use driver quite a bit this week, and not necessarily worry about spraying it too much. We'll see, I guess. We have different, my definition of spraying is much different than their definition, but there is some water. We'll see. I'm curious to see how, again, some of those hazards in the middle of the fairway impact some of these holes. We don't typically see that a whole lot on tour courses. So again, there's some bunkers in the middle of the fairways on a few holes, and some those big trees as well. So I don't know. I don't want to say we can completely throw away accuracy. It's more maybe good drives gained. Who's going to put it in the correct position, avoid some of those hazards. So we'll see. Again, I'm always going to, kind of lean towards driving distance, though, especially on courses like this in these birdie fests, where there aren't too many hazards to worry about, especially for these PGA tour players. And again, this is a resort course, so like you can go play this, with your buddies later this year if you can get a tee time, of course, and it's designed for players like guys like yourself and I. So they're not going to make this overly difficult to where no one wants to ever play it, at the resort. So again, that's why I think a lot of people are saying, like myself here, that it's going to be one of those birdie fests. We shouldn't really have to worry too much about you know, a lot of bogeys or bogey avoidance, I guess, this week. So kind of went on a tangent there. Going back to driving distance, though, top 5 players in this category, though, are Cameron Champ, Wyndham Clark, John Rahm, Trey Mullinax, and Joseph Bromlett. So definitely some guys that you can target if you're really looking at that driving distance stat. Of course, it's not everything, but you definitely want guys who can put it down the fairway and um, use those wedges into the green. Next up is going to be top 5 players in proximity from 175 yards. So I want guys again who are good with their longer irons. Let's look at some guys again who will put the ball closest to the pin, from longer distance. So Austin Smotherman is going to be at the top here. He ranks in the top 10 in both 175 to 200 and then 200 to 250. He's really good with those long irons. So he's going to be popping in quite a few of these stats here. He's also a pretty good driver as well. He ranks pretty high in driving distance too. So like Smotherman this week, he'll be in my write up here in a second. Taylor Moore is going to be second. Munoz is number 3, who's withdrawn out of the last 2 events that he has kind of signed up for, which is a little bit of a worry. He's pretty expensive in DraftKings this week. Not sure what I'm going to do with Munoz because he does look really good in the stats, but I'm curious on what or why he's withdrawn, excuse me, from the last couple events. I'm really interested this week to see what players say in interviews. For example, what is Rahm's motivation level right now? What is his interview like or going to be like? Abe Answer too. How is he treating the Mexico Open here? Is it kind of like his the second Masters for him, for example? A lot of these guys, Munoz again, for example, I don't know if we'll get an interview from him, but I would love to get some news maybe from him. And I talked about it before. I think the best thing you can do to get some of the news on these guys is looking at their tracker Twitter pages, because literally all those guys do is just follow news for those individuals. So we'll see if we can get some news on Munoz and some of those other withdrawal concerns. We've already had a few already with Daniel Berger today. That definitely, shifted some odds quite a bit. We'll look at some odds here in a second. The Greg Norman signature course is loaded with sand bunkers, very similar to other Norman courses. He tends to, create deep bunkers as well. So, it's definitely going to take some experience with sand saves to excel this week if you miss on approach. Top 5 players in sand save percentage are going to be Samuel No. I think I'm getting that pronunciation right. Brendan Todd, Kevin Tway, Charles Howell III, and Wesley Bryan. So those are some guys that you could potentially consider. Obviously, if you look at them, not too many of them are ball strikers. That's kind of the yin and yang that we see quite often with ball strikers versus, good short game players. Last but not least here, and there's a couple other stats that I'll throw in my model, and I'll talk about them just briefly here in a second. But last thing I really want to talk about is strokes gained on Paspalum courses in the last 24 rounds. I'm really looking at Corrales Golf Course, Grand Reserve, El Camaleon, and then Cocoa Beach Golf Course. That's the Puerto Rico Open. And I think that's probably the best course comp, just because it's longer, it's Paspalum, tee to green, and it's also a coastal course. So you'll see some wind potentially that impacts the event. So I think that's probably the best course comp. And we can potentially look at some of those guys that are good on that course as well. So top 10 players in against strokes gained on Paspalum courses is going to be Danny Lee coming in number 1, Abraham Answer number 2, which makes sense, the Mexico native. Adam Long's number 3. He's got really great results at Mayakoba. Might be worth a dart throw this week. We'll see how that kind of shakes out. Nate Lashley is going to be number 4. He's starting to gain some ownership. I think he's in the mid 7s on DraftKings and DFS. He's been playing pretty decent recently. He's another one of those guys that's been playing some of these Paspalum courses in the alternate events. So I can see why he's ranking high here. Anirbon Lahiri, number 5. Griot is number 6. He plays a lot of these coastal courses as well. He's not a good putter, but that kind of makes sense why he does well on these past palm greens because they're sticky. They're much slower than bent grass, for example. Some of the other stuff, or it's a lot of the greens that we see on tour. Again, that's why we typically see Griot with terrible putting stats. Um, but maybe he can find it, figure it out here. His, last, I don't know, 8 to 10 starts have been pretty terrible. I'm not even really much of a Griot guy, but probably more of a DFS play for me this week if we can get him at low ownership. I didn't get his price tag though, so I'll have to check that out. Finishing out the rest of this top 10 on past palm courses, JT Poston, number 7, Vincent Whaley, number 8, Russell Knox, number 9, and Brandon Wu, number 10. Again, these are just some of the main stats that I'm looking at. I got a couple other ones that are, will go in my model here in a second, but I really, want to encourage you all to check out Pat James' stat model each week. He has a really in-depth breakdown of all the stats that you should consider each and every week. Obviously, this week's kind of different because of we've never seen this course before, but he's got a really great just I can tell he's done this for a while, I guess, when I read through this. So he's really good at breaking down the stats and just highlighting some of the guys who have been peaking, for example, in a certain stat, and some of the guys who have been fading away. And that's one of my favorite parts of his pieces. All right. A couple more minor things, and then we'll start looking at some guys. We'll start breaking down a model. Weather, don't always go over this in the live show, but there is something particular here. Temperatures are, forecasted to be in the 80s, so I don't think we're going to have to worry about that one bit. There's likely going to be very few clouds down there as well. Should be some of the warmest temperatures that guys have seen all year long so far. However, it is found right along the Pacific Ocean. So Vallarta usually sees, consistent winds up to, 10 to 15 miles an hour each day. However, if you look at like the hourly weather forecast online, it's almost always like 10 to 15 in the afternoon and then 5 to 10 in the morning, if not really calm right away when they tee off. So, like we can't really do much with that as far as, the classic DFS stuff. Because again, guys are going to be teeing off AM, PM. The winds are basically the same each day in the afternoon. However, I do think there's going to be a really solid edge in showdown each day. I don't think it's massive, I guess, because the winds aren't going to be terrible, but you never know with these coastal courses. They might reach up to that 20-mile-an-hour range. We'll just kind of see and have to play it as the week goes on. But I do think there's a showdown edge this week. I don't typically go pretty heavy on showdown, but if there's going to be windy conditions in the afternoon and pretty calm in the morning, I don't see why you don't go a little bit deeper this week on that. So otherwise, I don't think we're going to see any delays with weather, excuse me. Just some windy conditions. So we'll see how that shakes things out. Let's go through some ownership here quick. Let me refresh my projections as we do that. If you all have any questions or anything on ownership, stats, salary, betting odds, literally anything like that, throw it in the chat. I would love to answer any questions that you might have here today. All right, so far, our number 1 highest owned golfer right now is Jon Rahm. Not a surprise. Even though he is the highest owned, golfer or highest price golfer in the field, I'm not going to be surprised by that one bit. I think we're going to see some really weird ownership this week because there's a lot of ugly prices. I'm assuming not everyone, but the chalk build, right, is going to be Rahm at the top, and then going pretty balanced down below. So you're going to see some names in that 7K range that, I don't know, are that 10, 15, 20% that just should not be. That might be a little bit high. 20 for sure is a little high for some of those guys, but you're just going to see like a Tyler Duncan at 10, 15%, which I kind of liked him this week, but I don't know if I can do that much. So other high-owned golfers, Gary Woodland's number 2 right now, which kind of sucks. He's my favorite play, and I'll get to him here in a second. CT Pan's going to be number 3. Scott Stallings, number 4. Chris Kirk, 5. Munoz, 6. Aaron Wise, I think we could add a few percentage points to that. He's a very popular bet this week. typically when we see those popular bets, they also are pretty popular in DFS as well, and regardless of the price too. So we'll see. There's just a lot of sticker shock this week. Guys in the 9K range that really aren't used to being up in that range. The 8K range is pretty ugly. Um, yeah, that's all I got to say about that, I guess. So, from a DFS perspective, make sure you're checking out the other fantasy points shows this week. They'll dive deeper into, ownership, salaries, of course, guys to fade, maybe a core potentially. I'll dive into a little bit. Oh, there's some guys that I like, I guess, but I'm really trying to delay my DFS lineups to Wednesday night as much as I can, because it's all about ownership. It's such a different game compared to handicapping. Of course, you're always going to be, held to the results of the, how things shake out, of course, but again, if you can get a guy at half the ownership at the same price, um, I don't know. Again, it just gives you so much leverage. It just helps you out so much more in DFS. So knowing ownership percentages, again, not until really Wednesday, you get the clearest version of that. Again, that's kind of why I'm pushing off my DFS. At least who I'm going to pick, because if I pick him too early on Monday and Tuesday, I feel like I have to play him come Wednesday. Otherwise, if they won, then such a big regret, which might not be the best way to think. But I'm just trying to push things off to Wednesday, at least as far as DFS goes. But let's look at some bets. Let's look at a model as well. I will share my screen and pull up the DraftKings Sportsbook page here as I get my model ready as well. Like I said, I'm definitely more looking at bets on Monday and Tuesday and just kind of letting ownership. Not going to dictate my lineups off ownership, but I'm really going to help or use it, excuse me, to help me out, I guess. So let's get this pulled up. Okay. For some reason, I can't get that sharing. That's all right. Not a problem. Okay. Looking at my model. So I got all the main stats that I was looking at or talking about before. Driving distance, approach, par five scoring, proximity from 175 to 200 plus. So all those key stats that I was mentioning before, those are definitely going to be again in my model here. I'm kind of playing around with the weights right now, but again, you'll see a lot of the approach numbers in there. Some other stats I'm looking at: birdies are better gained. Again, we're going to have guys that can shoot low, score birdies. Just strokes gained total over the last 24 rounds. I want guys who have been playing well. That's kind of an obvious one too. I have sand saves in there too. I talked about that before. Past Paulum, strokes gained total there. It's going to be kind of my main one. So if I crunch all of that together, my number one golfer, and I've ran this a couple of times, changing around the numbers, and he still sits at the top of my model each and every time I do it, no matter how much I adjust some of the weights. It's going to be Gary Woodland. So I don't really care about the chalk too much this week at 9,900 on DraftKings. Again, that's one that I'm probably going to have in quite a few of my lineups. He has just been playing so well recently. Again, he struggled a little bit last year, but he's been turning around recently. 3 top tens in his last 6 starts. His only missed cuts, though, were the Players' Championship in those 6, which was terrible weather. I can't remember if he had the bad draw or not. And then he lost like 3.5 strokes putting at the Masters, which we can kind of give him a little of an excuse there. So he gained over 6 strokes on approach at Valero in his last before the Masters, which was also a Norman design. He sits at the top of my model this week, like I was saying. First in approach, 4th in birdies or better, 7th in strokes gained on par 5s. He's 11th in proximity from 200 plus as well. So he really hits a lot of those key stats that I was mentioning before. So there's really no reason why he shouldn't be at the top of my model. So really like him quite a bit. Again, he missed the cut, the Masters and the Players. I'm willing to forgive that. Otherwise, he's got a bunch of top 10s in his 2022 season so far. I love Gary Woodland this week. I'm going to bet him, probably going to play him in DFS, trying to get the best number on him. However, it looks like that's been going down a little bit. Looks like right now you can get him at 20-1 on DraftKings. Not sure where that number is shaking out on FanDuel now. I don't have that pulled up right now, but yeah, Gary Woodland, my favorite play so far this week. One of those again that I don't really care about the ownership too much. I'm definitely going to be um, overweight on Gary Woodland. Looking at some other guys in the top of the field here, John Rahm. Again, kind of have or has been having a rough 2022, at least by his standards so far. Um, Again, he's had some issues with these putting contests too. There's just no reason, or there's no way you can bet Rahm at this number at 350. Just put like a parlay down on some NBA bets tonight, and I think you'd have a better option or a better chance of that cashing than again Rahm winning this week. It's just really rare that favorites at this kind of number actually pull it off. Um, it's golf, It's not like you're picking, the best NBA player like LeBron every week or every year to make the finals. That I mean, again, in the last decade, that was kind of a guarantee, of course. But this golf just so volatile. It's really hard to, win tournaments consistently. And Rahm's not even playing that terrible. He's just playing a little lower than I'm sure his expectations, especially heading into the year too. But again, I think that number is terrible on, is at least to bet on. I think he does have a decent price tag on DraftKings though. Another chalky play though, so you certainly can't pair Rahm and Woodland together, or otherwise you're just going to have to get so different elsewhere. So probably going to split those two up a little bit in a few lineups. We'll get into that, again on Wednesday. Tringali's number 2 on DraftKings right now. As far as odds go, he's there at 20-1 as well, right there with Abe Answer, the Mexico native. I think, again, Answer, he's I don't know, he's had some withdrawal, concerns. He's withdrew quite a few times over the last month now, at least, for his record. I guess he's not one to really pull out of tournaments like a Louis, for example. So um, I'm interested to see again where he's at. I mean, if he's healthy, he's a great play. He doesn't really show up too much in the model, I guess, but Abe Answer, I really don't mind him at all. Again, if he's healthy, I'm really looking to see, where his head is at in his interview tomorrow potentially. So Kevin Na is also 20-1. Again, Gary Woodland's certainly my favorite in that range there. Couple other guys here. Let's kind of get through this a little bit. So Chad Ramey is one that I wrote up in my article. He has some really good history on these Paspalum courses, especially in the last couple of months. He won at Corrales in March, which was also wall-to-wall Paspalum. He finished 5th at the Puerto Rico Open in March as well. Also Paspalum. Finished runner-up in a 2020 Corn Ferry Tour event in Mexico. So that's one that I kind of, made my eyes open a little bit. I think everyone's talking about his record on those 2 coastal courses or the 2 Paspalum courses in March. But he also, again, won a Corn Ferry Tour event in Mexico in March. So it's clear that he likes playing golf in Latin America. I really like Ramey this week. He has some good stats as well. He's second in birdie or better percentage within this field. He ranks 3rd in total strokes gained on courses over 7,400 yards. He actually doesn't rank great in driving distance. That's actually one of his lower categories within my model, but he ranks again 3rd in total strokes gained on courses over 7,400 yards. So I'm assuming that has to do with his proximity. Let me pull his numbers up here quick. Yeah, pretty decent proximity from 175 to 200. I'm kind of in the middle of the pack of the field, I guess. So, but I'm assuming that's kind of where he makes it up there. So I think I saw a 71 number on him. Let me check that again here. 80-1 now on DraftKings. So that will also be a bet that I will be taking. I'm not entirely sure where his ownership's sitting at right now, but it is Monday. Things can always change. Looks like he's about 10% at 7,900. So that's something I could probably stomach. I think there's going to be a lot of guys that are chalky in that 7K range because everyone's going up to Rahm at the top. Yeah, and I don't really blame them, I guess. So gonna have to find ways to get different. Next up on my notes list here is Austin Smotherman. kind of a dart play, a long shot, of course. He actually began his career on the PGA Tour at Latino America. Wrote about this in my article as well. But again, he won his first event in 2018, which was the Mexico Open. Now, you might be wondering, like, did he win this event before? Yes, he did, but again, it was played on the PGA Tour at Latino America. It was played on a different golf course, so we can't really go off of that too much. But again, like Ramey, it just proves that he has he's comfortable playing down here. He's played, his beginning of his career down here. He won the Mexico Open, even though it was much weaker field, I'm sure, and again on a different golf course. But he has decent results here in Mexico. He also has really good numbers too. He is fourth in approach for me, fifth in par five scoring, best in the field in proximity from 175 plus, like I mentioned. So um, he's just popping in all my stats. 150 to 1. I really think he's a really decent, dart throw this week. A couple other names I want to throw out here. Cameron Champ. He's starting to pick up steam, at least, on Twitter. Anytime you get these courses that are longer and you can kind of bomb it and not really worry where it goes too much compared to other courses, Cameron Champ's probably going to pop up. Really long off the tee, first in driving distance, no surprise there. I think he's getting a lot of buzz this week because he had a decent showing at the Masters. He gained strokes in every category but around the green there. But the big stat or the big story on him is both of his PGA Tour wins have came after a string of missed cuts, a decent finish the week before, and then he won the week after that, which is kind of what he's going through right now. So that's not really something, I guess, like is something we can really bank off long term, but who knows? Maybe that's just something with Champ. And I think since his stats just kind of match what we're looking for, I think that's why he's kind of fit my eye a little bit more. But that's again the story with Cam Champ there. So we'll see if it has a third chapter this week. Wyndham Clark, another guy who loves to bomb it off the tee, second in driving distance. He looks solid at the Zurich Classic with Tringali. Multiple top finishes at these coastal Paspalum courses. Probably going to be pretty popular in DFS. Let's go ahead and look at that as well. Just 8% right now, but we'll see how that shakes out, I guess. Again, there's so many names in that mid 7K range, really all throughout the 7Ks that are going to make that ownership spread out a little bit more as far as DFS goes. The rest of my model here, so I guess I didn't break it down too much. Again, Woodland sitting number 1, Jon Rahm number 2. He's really only behind Woodland, likely due to sand save and just strokes gained total on Paspalum courses. Woodland ranks 15th there, so that's not really something that I don't know, is a major thing that should separate those two, but that's why they go 1-2 for me. Kirk comes in number 3. He's 6th in strokes gained total over the last 24 rounds. He's been playing some really good golf, but I feel like we have seen him at his kind of peak for this season right now. I feel like he's kind of on the downward trend of that. So let's look at his ownership right now. Pretty high too, about 20% right now at 9,600. So I don't know. I think right now there's 2 ways that people are going. Jon Rahm at the top and spreading it out with 7s down below, I think, or mixing and matching some of these 9K guys. Again, you could do both, I guess, but you really need to be wary of ownership. Rest of my model here. Munoz number 4. Again, need to look at withdrawal news for him. Russell Knox, number 5. He ranks 8th in strokes gained total. He just hasn't been able to put 4 solid rounds together yet. Again, one worry with him is sand save, but he's a really good approach player. He shouldn't be hitting these bunkers too often, in my opinion. Matt Jones, number 6, even though he is a bit of a shorter hitter, actually he ranks 28th in driving distance, so I can't really say that about him too much. Pretty decent long irons player as well. 60th strokes gained total on Paspalum, kind of right in the middle of the pack there. So he ranks pretty high in my model. I think his price is a little high on DraftKings, so I could see that, really lowering his ownership. Nope, he's about 15%. Again, this is Monday. things can clearly change over the week. All right, rest of the model here. Smotherman, number 7 overall in my model. Like I said, going to be betting him. Probably going to be playing him in DFS quite a bit. Von Taylor ranks 8th in my model, likely due to his proximity numbers. His approach numbers are really solid, decent birdie getter as well. Bottom, lower part of the field in driving distance, though. So, if driving distance is really going to be an advantage this week, I don't know if I'll be playing Von Taylor. Tony Finau comes in at 9th, Lonto Griffin 10th. Some other guys that I kind of wanted to look into a little bit more. They actually all fall, 11th, 12th, and 13th. We got Nate Lashley. He ranks 3rd in strokes gained total on these past Palm courses, 10th in proximity from 175 to 200. I don't think he's a bad play. I think he's in the mid 7s as well as on DraftKings for DFS. Charles Howell, the third, CH3, he ranks 15th in strokes gained total. He actually is first in birdies or better gained. But I never really think of him as a guy out there scoring 20 below par. So he's not really a bet for me, but I think he could be a decent DFS play. Let's check his ownership. Not too bad, 6.8% at 8,400. And I think if you're trying to get contrarian this week, it's definitely going to be the 8K range. I don't know if there's going to be too many guys I'm fitting in my player pool there, but maybe find one or two that you like and move on. Yeah, let's see here. So yeah, I talked about CH3. CT Pan is high up in the ownership right now. I don't know if that'll actually play out because it's CT freaking Pan, but he is pretty decent across the board. He doesn't really have too many weaknesses. I guess driving distance and strokes gained on par 5s, but he could still probably lay up here quite a bit and get birdies on a lot of these holes. We'll see though. Again, if driving distance. It is kind of one of his weaknesses here. Tyler Duncan, another guy who ranks pretty high here. I really wanted to look more into Kirk Kitayama. Where is he at in my model? He's 29th in my model. I had him a little higher until I adjusted some things. He's really not been great over the last few rounds. He's 117th in strokes gained total, but he just pops in a few of these main stats. 9th in driving distance, 8th in proximity from 175 to 200, 19th and 200 plus. Decent sand saver as well. Decent on these past Palm courses. I think he had a decent showing at the Puerto Rico Open. So Kirk Kitayama could be a decent dart throw in the lower or the mid 6K range guys there. Otherwise, again, Tyler Duncan popping up in my model quite a bit. If his ownership is going to be what it's at, I don't know if I'm going to be able to play him, of course. He's just a really cheap option. 10th in strokes gained total over the last 24 rounds, which is pretty good for Mr. T. Dunks there. 12th in proximity from 200 plus. So if we're really going to see those long irons, he's 7th in 175 to 200. So, or never mind. Sorry, that's Svensson. And Svensson's another good play. I just can't see myself telling people to bet Svensson anymore. He's just been kind of letting me down quite a bit. So I do like Svensson. He's one of my favorite rookies here. Another rookie, he's actually another Canadian as well that I wanted to talk about here. And then we will start to wrap things up. It's going to be Callum Taren, mainly because he ranks 8th in driving distance. He loves to push that ball all across the course. He finished well at the Puerto Rico Open too, which again was past Palm, tee to green, and was also over 7,400 yards, I believe, too. So very similar to the course that we're going to see this weekend. Really nothing pops out too much other than that for him. I just think he's a decent dart throw. Again, if you're really liking driving distance this week, not going to bet him by any means, but I think as far as DFS goes, going to be a really low-owned option in that upper 6K range there. Okay. All right. That is my model there. I don't have much else to say besides that. Again, some of my main takeaways this week are it's going to be a birdie fest, in my opinion. If you are kind of feeling like not playing very much, I don't blame you because it is kind of a really weak field. these birdie fest. Again, like I said at the open, anyone can win this. So it's not a week to empty the bank account, in my opinion, at least. Um, as far as betting goes, because Rom could go out and win this thing at, 350 or plus 350, and all of our bets would go down the tank because the best freaking golfer in the field goes out and wins this thing. And that's just something that kind of sucks sometimes. So I do like it from a DFS perspective, though, because there's just a lot of names that guys have never heard of before, especially some of the casuals that have been sticking around since the Masters, for example. Um, I do think there's a lot of advantage in DFS this week, especially Showdown, like I was saying. So I'm really interested to see how this event shakes out. I thought the field was going to be a little bit better, but we still got some decent names up there. It's by no means one of those alternate events that has, a really weak field because everyone else is playing the players, for example, or something like that. So interested to see how it, shakes out. Interested to see how some of the Mexican players play, like Answer, of course. I kind of like Answer quite a bit. So yeah, that's all I got. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Twitter at Huntman10. Make sure you sign up for a Fantasy Point subscription. You can use my promo code TheNest22. That's 2 N's and 2 S's. Yeah, good luck, everyone. I hope you all have a great week. Hope to see you all next week for the Wells Fargo and make some money this weekend. Good luck, everyone.